We want to start out by giving you an update on a very important story that we brought to you on Tuesday. A federal court magistrate heard Tina Peters' habeas corpus petition in a Colorado courtroom that day. You'll recall that Tina's attorney, Peter Tickton, joined us just before the hearing. And as promised, Peter joins us again now to share how this very important hearing for an American hero went. Peter, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today, because all of us are curious to see your thoughts on how it went. I saw an article from Colorado Public Radio, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say, Peter. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Ken. Yes, I think it went great. I can tell you this. We have a magistrate judge who read everything very carefully. He's a smart man. He understands the law very well. He understands the facts. He just wants to make sure that he's in the right place, and I do believe he's leaning in our direction at this point. I don't know that he was at the beginning of the hearing, but I think he is, if he has any leaning at all. But he's going to give a fair shake one way or the other. The fact is, right now we're at a threshold question as to whether we've basically eliminated all of our remedies that are available in the state, because you have to do that before you can go into the federal court and ask for writ of habeas corpus.
I see. The Colorado Public Radio article that I saw suggested that the magistrate showed, quote unquote, skepticism during the hearing on Tuesday. So you're saying perhaps initially, yes, but as you continue to talk more, the judge seemed to kind of understand where you were coming from.
Yes, I think so. I mean, that's the benefit. That's the reason he had the hearing, so he could hear from the parties. He had an open mind. And thank God, we're not dealing with somebody who's politically charged. So we're dealing with somebody who's going to apply the law to the facts, and that's all I can ever ask for a judge.
Yeah, and I just want to I want to remind our viewers of what you're arguing. Essentially, the court has said that they denied bond because they're afraid of what Tina Peters might say. As Mike Lindell, who was on the show yesterday and had a big win in court, I'm sure you heard, noted she had a show right here on this platform during the time that she was going through, all these legal issues. And so essentially the court says they don't want her speaking out publicly. And you have said that what you told the court is, we have a person in prison because of a fear that she's a danger to society because of what she might say, right?
Right, exactly. And that's just not the US of A. We are the country that we are because we have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is freedom of thought. And because we're able to invent and grow and convey ideas, popular or not, we've been able to become, we're 4% of the world's population, but we've got 25% of its capital. Why? It's because of our ability to think out of the box, or the freedom to be able to think out of that box. So, there are three things that were going on. One is the fact that they violated the First Amendment in that she's locked up because the judge is afraid of what she's going to say. The second thing is she didn't get a fair trial. She wasn't allowed to present her defenses. And the third is the fact that there's a supremacy clause. So if you've got laws by the United States, it says you've got to protect and keep your evidences to the election for 22 months. It's not your choice to follow whatever bizarre things a Secretary of State might instruct you to say, what she doesn't even have the power. But the fact of the matter is, she wasn't even able to defend herself and put on her defense. Yet we are willing to get rid of those, to get rid of the issue as to whether or not those issues have been extinguished, and just deal with the question of the freedom of speech, because that's a really good position for us. We have three really good positions.
Yeah, you do. And when you're speaking about the records preservation, I'll just remind our viewers that the Department of Justice, the Trump Department of Justice, has sent a records preservation letter, I guess is what you call it, to the state of Colorado for both, for a couple of election cycles. So, and noting that is according to the law that they're supposed to keep it, right? Which is what Tina was essentially doing. I want to talk about precedents for this, because the judge sounds like, and it sounded like the judge suggested that this is unprecedented. He said that he hadn't ever found a case in the history of the U.S. where a federal court granted habeas on an appeal bond And then he asked, well, given that, how would this be managed? So say she violates that bond, Tina does, which we know she wouldn't. Can the state court revoke bond? Since he's a federal court, does he revoke the bond? So he suggested that this is unprecedented. Is it, Peter?
It's a little bit beyond what's been decided before, but there are many cases where it's been made very clear that bail bond can be subject of a habeas corpus application. And truthfully, there's never been one that's so one-sided as this, so clear. The trial judge, what he did was an aberration. What he did was a denial of due process. I mean, and I'm just using the words. I mean, not allowed to present your defense is crazy in a criminal case. I mean, nobody in your audience would want to ever be in a situation where they're charged with a criminal case, an offense, and there's not they're not allowed to have a defense, and that's what happened here. But more than anything, what you have here is one person who's in prison because she would tell the truth. And that's really the thing. They're not afraid of her lying to the public and saying things that are not true. They're afraid that she's going to say things that are true. But these things are coming out now. We've got the right government in power right now. They lost the election. Those that cheated in the election lost it. So the powers that be are able to look at the election, and you're going to see things coming down the pike where you're going to see things about the machines not being what the machines would rather you believe they are.
Well, one thing we certainly learned since 2020, Peter, is that there's no one more feared than someone who will tell the truth. We learned that through COVID. We learned that through election fraud. What do you think is a timeline on more of this information coming out, Peter? A lot of us have been waiting for a while now.
I'll tell you, we heard something last weekend that was kind of startling in terms of Barack Obama, but that's just the beginning of it. The fact is, you're going to find out that things that are supposed to be only American are actually controlled from people that are in Serbia. You're going to find out that how they affect the vote, and you're going to see that we are in a situation where we actually have an election emergency right now, because right now we can't trust the voter rolls, which have what we call modified duplicates in it. So there could be Peter Tickton, and there could be another Peter Tickton, and another Peter Tickton, and another one, all with the same social security number, all with my same driver's license number, same address, just a different voter ID, and all of them vote. Now, how could this happen? And it's happening. So once the public understands what's going on, they're going to see that we really do have an election emergency that's going to have to be dealt with by the federal government.
I agree. We actually have some news, more news out of the Trump DOJ related to Michigan and voter rolls and records preservation a little later in the show that we'll share with our audience. In the meantime, you noted the explosive news on Russiagate and the receipts that Tulsi Gabbard provided. Is this perhaps a strategic approach to revealing the information to the public? Because if the public understands, okay, this Russiagate hoax, it was really a hoax. And it was perpetuated at the very highest level of government. The buck literally did stop with the president. He had his hands all in it, Obama did. So given that and the way they lied about that and how the media was so complicit, then does that make the American public more ready to accept then the election evidence? Is this a very strategic phased approach? I understand that there are very big guns coming for Tulsi because they're not happy with this initial dump, and I know for a fact they don't want any information on election fraud or the machines to come out.
Yeah, well, under Alina Habba, I was the one that did file the lawsuit, Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, and et al., including others like Schiff and Donna Wasserman Schultz and so on, Deborah Wasserman Schultz and so on. But so that's what that was all about. And we had a biased district court judge who basically threw out that case, but is coming up for appeal. Oral arguments coming in the next few weeks, and so that's probably going to get reversed. But the one thing we didn't have the real tie-in to Barack Obama. We had the rest of it, and so now we have Barack Obama as well. I mean, not that we didn't know, but we didn't have as much as what was just recently released. So
You
that's where that.
knew.
Oh, you
You
knew.
knew, but you had to have the explicit receipts, and now you have them. So that's huge. Let us know when you have more developments on that front, because we definitely want to keep up with that. Before we run out of time, you did note that every day that Tina spends in jail is another day in hell. She's in a maximum security prison with murderers. You explained this to the judge, and that there is a real concern about her survival in this hardcore prison. How is Tina doing, and how does she feel about how her hearing went on Tuesday?
She's optimistic. She felt that I did a good job. Thank goodness. The fact is that there's no getting around the fact that every day, what she explained to me was that every night she's surprised that she managed to live through another day. And imagine that. Just imagine. I don't even want to go there because I'll well up. But the fact is, she's in danger. It's needless. It's stupid, and she's there to hide information. I mean, think about it. She's in prison because she saved evidence. That's her crime. And her crime is basically how she went about saving the evidence, which is the only way that she was able to save the hard drive or a copy of the hard drive to be able to prove what's now going to be proved thanks to Tina Peters. That's why she's a hero, because she did what needed to be done, what was the right thing to do. But when you think about it, who are you going to believe? The ones that suppress the truth and suppress information, or the one that was saving the evidence so that we actually have it? I mean, there's really no question here as to who and how good Tina Peters is, and yet there's no way to get her out. President Trump would have pardoned her already if it weren't for the fact that it's a state conviction, not a federal conviction. So he doesn't have the ability to do that at this
point. It's unreal, and it could have been any of us. Peter Tichton, thank you so much. Give Tina our best. Tell her that we're praying for her.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my phone just moved. But anyway, I will.
And also, I did want to mention, Peter, you actually have a big event coming up very soon, right? On this Friday, you'll be speaking at the Perk dinner. Tell us about that.
I'm honored that they let me speak at these different occasions. But I think the reason they do is because I just tell them the way it is. The fact of the matter is that we really have a big problem. I mean, think about it for a second. The election 2020 was stolen. If it was stolen, it wasn't Biden. Biden's not capable of doing it. It's people that are above him, and these people basically controlled the United States. And so much of what they did was just so harmful. We can never let them back. And how do we make sure that they don't come back? Because this is a matter of people taking over our government. This isn't the Americans that took over our government or Biden. Biden couldn't fix an election. He can't fix a flat tire.
That's true. He can't even fix his tie. Let's be honest. If we're really getting down to his capabilities, and when we're able to say more, I know you and I will have a very in-depth conversation about who actually has been running our elections there, and therefore running the country, picking the people who are in office, and right. It is going to be shocking for people. I think it's going to be a little shocking, but what you understand, and it has to be laid out so specifically, because it's a very complex system. It's complex, it's complicated, and we had no idea what was going on for, honestly, decades, really, at least over a decade, Peter. So,
yeah. But thank God we've got the right man in there now. Thank God.
Yeah. I think he needs to declare a national election emergency sooner rather than later. Every day I look to see, every day I'm waiting, is this today? Is this today? Is this today? Because I think we've got to do that soon. But here we go. We'll keep watching, Peter. We'll keep watching. Thank you so much. Sort of related. According to sources talking to the Absolute Truth, President Donald Trump is expected to announce his approval of an extended lease in Venezuela for Chevron, the oil company Chevron, under the Maduro regime. Back in February, President Trump had terminated a permit issued by the United States government allowing the energy giant to pump and export Venezuelan oil. The anticipated announcement is the result of an ongoing effort waged by Trump insider Rick Grenell, who's the former ambassador to Germany and former acting DNI, as well as many conservative-aligned lobbyists, surprisingly. Now, Grenell has reportedly won out in a battle between him and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Rubio was vehemently opposed to Chevron continuing to operate in the Latin American dictatorship. Oil operations in Venezuela arguably go to prop up the Maduro regime and cartel oligarchs, according to many former intel professionals and former chiefs of station in Latin America we talked to. Oligarchs with alleged ties to Smartmatic voting machines. And we're talking about who controls our elections. Funding from the regime also goes to push Tren de Aragua gang members into Western countries to create a destabilizing effect. And we have breaking news, exclusive breaking news on that front as well. Now that Donald Trump has effectively kicked Tren de Aragua out of the United States, continues to do so, but has made a major dent in the numbers here. Tren de Aragua paramilitary units who have been deported from the USA back to Venezuela are now being sent into Europe by the Maduro regime, per a national security source familiar. So essentially, Maduro is repurposing Tren de Aragua and now sending them into Europe to try to destabilize Europe the way they were terrorizing us here in the United States. We'll keep our eye on that story and bring you any further developments. Up next, Mark Levin is not the great one. In fact, he's the wrong one. And I have someone who agrees with me to discuss after the break, the great Kurt Mills, who really is great, after this commercial break.
Swollen limbs, joint pain, inflammation, skin aging, and cognitive decline. These are just a few of the awful side effects that you can experience due to poor blood circulation. And popping ibuprofen is not a solution to the pain. It's only temporary relief, and it's only masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas. These particular omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. Has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. For a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for up to 66% off plus free shipping. Just go to getkrill.com/Lindell right now to get your special offer.
The legend of Mark Levin as, quote unquote, the great one is one of those funny relics from back in the days when Fox News personality Sean Hannity was still relevant. In other words, the good old days of 2015. In fact, Mark Levin is very often the wrong one, as anyone who can use an internet search engine will tell you. It's been clear for a while that Mark Levin is the voice of boomer neocons who are going to die from an overdose of Cialis. And that's fine, you know. What's not fine is Levin attacking his fellow conservatives with the same smears that liberals employ when conservatives happen to disagree with Mark Levin. And just why might Mark Levin be spitting to his right? Could it have something to do with the fact that he's been the #1 cheerleader for sending the U.S. to war with Iran? Could it be that Levin's true sympathies lie with a foreign nation that shall not be named, rather than with this country, the United States of America? He wouldn't be the first.
Find a way, and I'm going to go and show my support.
There's the Republican Representative Brian Mast from Florida, who is the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Here he is last year, parading around the halls of Congress in his Israeli Defense Force uniform. Before being elected last year to the House of Representatives, Randy Fine of Florida advocated for nuking the Gaza Strip in retaliation for the horrific attacks on October 7th. Congressman Fine also sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Recent development, that is. Our next guest, Kurt Mills, the executive director of the American Conservative, pointed out that, quote, the only comparable level of foreign infiltration was accomplished by the Soviets. To discuss the apparently special U.S.-Israeli relationship, as well as the general goings-on in the Middle East these days, we're joined by Kurt Mills, his first time actually on our show. It's nice to meet you, Kurt.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
I follow you on X. I love your takes. I read your work. So I was, of course, encouraged to see that you obviously feel the same way that I feel about Mark Levin. And yet in the last few days, just the last few days alone, President Trump has endorsed his book, encouraged people to buy it, to watch his show. Why can't Donald Trump just quit Mark Levin?
Look, I'm not going to psychoanalyze the president, but I think the essential appeal here is pretty clear. Levin is hiding the ball on his past and on his central policy views, which are basically unreconstructed George W. Bush neoconservatism, maybe even worse, frankly. And he is cloaking that by appealing to the president's vanity, which I think most would say is his Achilles heel.
It is, but how much of an effect does, say, Mark Levin actually have on the foreign policy decisions that President Trump or his administration makes?
I think for the last 30 to 45 days, he's been influential. I mean, there was an anchoring on a sort of special lunch that was held at the White House in Levin's honor, where he was a special guest at that. I think that wasn't particularly per se important, but Levin is in the president's phone. The president has appeared on Levin's show, and he is pushing, a very hawk Israeli neoconservative line on this, and it's not particularly sophisticated stuff. I mean, if you just look at the publication feed, the man usually types in all caps. There's frequently typos. This is somebody who wrote an entire book about the alleged malign influence of something called the Franklin School. He meant the Frankfurt School, sort of German Marxist, movement in the 20th century. This is someone who is a hack, frankly, and who does not really see any distinction between U.S. and American and Israeli national interest. And I think we've seen the basic consequence of that, which is that whatever Benjamin Netanyahu makes up in Jerusalem on a given day is what Levin is driving. And it is striking, for this contingent that sort of cloaks itself as the quote true MAGA and says anyone who is attacked is a quote an influencer. Anytime they don't get every specific iteration of their way, they whine and whine and whine and throw a hissy fit. Case in point, last week when Israel, not content to have a 5-front war, opened up yet another war with Syria, and the White House was reportedly very upset about that. That the special Middle East envoy Tom Barak in Ankara sort of negotiated against that, and Levin wants Trump's friend Tom Barak's head. I mean, this is somebody who will not stop. It's not like you can do what Levin wants, or Netanyahu wants. You can take the summer off, take a respite. We are still dominated by this, and it's not even the end of July.
Marlin, not just cheerleading for war with Iran, but also Ukraine. In addition to that, he's demanding that we ignore the Jeffrey Epstein story as well, saying it's not important. Let's listen.
We have a lot to run on, and you have a lot to run against, given the other party. But I will tell you this, we better be united, we better be strong, we better be focused, we better be articulate. We can't waste our time on Epstein and other stuff that are going on here that some people want us to focus on. I've about had it with all that stuff. We better focus on who we are, what we're doing, where we want to take the country, and what they want to do to the country. Mr. Speaker, God bless you, my friend. I appreciate you very, very much.
You too, Mark. Thanks for all you do. God bless.
He's not the only influencer pundit that we've heard that exact same verbiage from. We've heard it now from many, including Ben Shapiro. But it seems like that line might be backfiring because the American public isn't accepting that. And they've gotten quite a bit of backlash. And I actually had a source call me yesterday and say, well, yeah, essentially he's our guy, talking about Israel. He's our guy, right? But he's not Netanyahu's guy. He's Ehud Barak's guy. So I think that might be the shift that they're taking now that the line, just ignore it, isn't working. And Ehud Barak did visit Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse in New York some 27 times, right? So is that a valid argument?
Look, I think the administration made a tactical mistake in its handling of the Epstein case. It hasn't gone away. It's only metastasized in public interest since their initial approach. So I think that was obviously an error. Supermajorities of Americans want all the files released, including supermajorities of Republicans, based on all available data. The reality here is that it is striking that those who want the most Iran hawkish, Middle East hawkish, pro-Netanyahu, pro-Israeli government hardline approach think there's nothing to see here with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, you don't need to indulge the conspiracy theory world by just saying that the preponderance of the evidence indicates that Jeffrey Epstein had a mysterious accumulation of wealth, number one, and number two, had significant ties to Israel. And number three, there is a preponderance of evidence that he has significant ties to intelligence agencies, possibly US, possibly Israeli. And there's a very fair question, is this currently impacting US foreign policy? And President Trump is in a no-win situation if he just tries to shut this down. This all occurred when President Trump was a private citizen. Epstein was, pretty much in exile by the time he came into the White House. So for Trump to choose an alliance with people who want to just shut down any inquiry into Epstein, I think that's a total loser. This is the kind of way to attrit young voters. It's the kind of thing to, bleed the sort of Joe Rogan type voters, the type of, critical linchpin that his plurality command mandate in the 2024 election.
And I think that Trump is realizing this isn't going away, according to Representative Ralph Norman, talking about the reception last night that Trump had with Republican lawmakers. He said that the president said that he would be releasing everything, is what he told them. That was off camera. That was in this private reception. So we shall see. But let's talk about the potential impact on foreign policy and geopolitics, because we're still looking at Iran, right? Iran says it's restarting its nuclear uranium enrichment program. Trump said the bombings of the facilities were total. Also, Iran is set to begin talks again with the United Nations, according to headlines today. Kurt, so where do we stand, and where is this headed?
This thing that's going on with the Iran negotiations is there's this concern about snapback sanctions that can be put on by the Europeans in August. It's a bit technical, but basically the Iranians need to return to the negotiating table, at least vis-a-vis Europe, to prevent that from happening. Zooming out, the foreign minister, Arachi, did an interview with Fox News, Brett Baer. I think, pretty unusual that Fox would even allow that kind of platforming. So you see, basically an Iranian state that does want to come back to the table, but is very apprehensive and, thinks that it is possible the U.S. colluded with Israel to hoodwink them. An understandable anxiety. I don't think the evidence is there. So there, the communication between these two countries remains pretty poor. But I think you see, and I think, again, a little counter to the Russian case, you see a country that very much does want to make a deal. Now, they have a pretty clear red line. They don't want to agree to it. Zero enrichment is basically an Israeli line. But I think there is ample opportunity here for a deal that is way better than the deal that Obama got 10 years ago. And Trump's got it right on the table, basically on offer, if Trump and Steve Witkoff can go back and negotiate with the Iranians this summer and into the fall, and not have Benjamin Netanyahu sabotage the proceedings as he did in June.
So you're saying that Trump is actually sitting in a pretty good place right now in order to get an even better deal with Iran?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is a deal between the U.S. and Iran, and that's a similarity. There's a similarity between the Obama deal, but it is basically a complete canard and poor description to say that this is just JCPOA 2. This is pretty different. This is a more hardline government in Iran. Iran's in a different position. Trump, if deal, it will be a Republican-backed deal, sort of a Nixon goes to China situation. It will be much more likely to be durable. for the foreseeable future. And then additionally, it's very possible the Iranians come down on their enrichment number. It's very possible they allow stuff like above ground inspections. This is stuff they never agreed to with Obama. Iran is in a much different position than they were 10 years ago, and Trump has the opportunity for a diplomatic accord that avoids a war. Now, of course, Israel wants a war, and they want the United States taxpayer to pay for it and potentially put American personnel in danger. And I just fail to see how that's in the U.S. national interest. I think we have had a clear political verdict for elections now, not just Trump, but also his predecessor, Obama, and with Biden, to get us out. Americans do not want war hawks. It is a D.C. and Jerusalem thing makes this happen.
Final question. Trump has said as recent as 3 weeks ago he would bomb Iran again if necessary. Is Trump in a better position because he does have that credible threat? Does that bring Iran to the table, or does that kind of push them farther away from any potential diplomatic solution?
I think it's murky. I think they're certainly intimidated. Some of the Israeli assassinations of IRG Revolutionary Guard figures was pretty impressive tactically speaking. But the reality is a plan to just keep getting the U.S. to bomb Iranian nuclear sites, which, number one, Trump and Pete Hegseth seem like they don't want to do. That's why they're being so adamant that they actually got rid of all this nuclear material, although I'm not sure that's established. I think if the U.S. doesn't want to be in a situation in which it's committed to doing Israel's foreign policy for it, that is prolonged bombing campaigns forever and ever, that this is all that Trump does as president, need to hatch out a deal this year with the Iranians.
Yeah. It's good to know that he's at least sitting in a good position to do so now. We'll watch how this develops over the next 3 weeks or few weeks. Kurt Mills, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us with the American Conservative. Up next, Tulsi Gabbard has exposed the deep state, but there's still some deep state actors hanging out, even in the Trump administration. We'll discuss with Rob Maness after the break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at NirvantaHealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to NirvantaHealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally. With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
As we covered here yesterday, the Trump administration's Director of National Intelligence, the great Tulsi Gabbard, proved how former President Obama and his top So-called intelligence officials such as former CIA Director John Brennan, FBI Director James Comey, and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper conspired to abuse their roles as senior intelligence leaders to undermine President Donald Trump's first term in office by smearing Trump as a Russian agent of influence. We know it as Russiagate. And now we, the American people, are demanding indictments and prosecutions of all those involved in this rolling administrative coup, including John Brennan, who we believe may have, in fact, perjured himself while under oath in Congress years ago.
Did the CIA rely on it?
No.
Why not?
Because we didn't. It wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence information that we had. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. It was not.
Yet we now know that Brennan absolutely used the Steele dossier as a pretext to initiate the Russiagate investigation into Donald Trump. And speaking of which, the main CIA analyst who worked for John Brennan and helped him to concoct this ridiculous Russiagate campaign of terror against Donald Trump remains employed by the CIA to this very day. Why hasn't Trump's new CIA director, John Ratcliffe, fired this analyst? And for the matter, why has President Trump allowed for a senior Democratic Party lawyer to be hired as the NSA's main lawyer? Back in the first term, the Trump administration was full of globalist vipers loyal to Obama and the Democrats. And it's happening again, I'm sorry to say. Trump is not in full control of his administration. We're now joined by retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Rob Maness, who is also the host of the Rob Maness Show, which can be found on Spotify and iTunes. Colonel Maness, good to see you. There are slight improvements this administration, but we still have some of these really, really bad actors in key positions. That guy, that CIA analyst, whoever they are, should have been fired immediately. And then this lawyer I'm talking about is one April Doss. And I'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment. I think that the American people now, we've always demanded action, but now given the exposure by Gabbard of the full scale and greater exposure of the scale of the corruption, heads must roll, so to speak. Colonel Maness.
Well, absolutely, heads must roll. Let me just add one more thing to you. The senior advisor for the Deputy Secretary of Defense was in the CIA under the Biden administration at a minimum, and I think it goes all the way back to Brennan. So that's the current gentleman. So it's a problem. This is a problem with these resistors and moles and spies that are inside the Trump administration, and they're passing vetting through the Presidential Personnel Office somehow. I don't really understand it. I don't have any inner workings information on the PPO, but Mr. Gore, Sergio Gore, the head of that office, he needs to get this figured out, because we cannot allow these people to continue to serve and subvert this administration. They're on the same mission that Barack Obama set them on in early December of 2016. It's a seditious conspiracy to overthrow the duly elected president of the United States and his government. They tried to do it in 2016 and 2017 and throughout Mr. Trump's first administration, and they're getting better because they're hiding themselves much, much more effectively, and they're going to try to do it again. As a matter of fact, they are trying to do it again. If you didn't see the Daily Mail article that hit yesterday, hitting Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth again from internal anonymous moles inside the Department of Defense. We have got to get MAGA loyal policy, national security individuals into these organizations, from the intelligence agencies through all the Department of Defense agencies and all of the operational commands and all of the service departments. We have got to get them in there, and it's not happening at the right amount and at the right levels.
Yeah, you brought up PPO and Sergio Gore, who is technically the the top person over there. Now, I've heard that he might not have operational control of PPO, and there might be some beneath him, and then of course chief of staff, who are very influential in the hiring of some of these people. But also, like you said, a lot of them are hiding themselves much better this time around, and perhaps that's so, but they're still having a detrimental effect on the administration. And one way is by making sure that certain information doesn't make it into the intelligence reports that are given to the president, right? That he doesn't understand the full context of what's going on in a way that might protect, say, the agency, right? Or certain entities that they contract with. And so that there's not real accountability. They're in there that they can manage the situation.
Yeah. Speaking of Sergio Gore, look, he's a friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. I trust him. I don't think he's the issue. I think the issue is these layers of people that have been able to hide themselves inside not only the PPO operation, but throughout the government. As I said, they've had years to get better at doing this effective insertion of it's why we call them moles, and they're slowly and in a lot more methodical way, in a more nuanced way, trying to undermine this administration, just like they did the last time. That's why it's critically important that what you said in your opening, Emerald, was that we have to hold these people accountable. And these are crimes. Seditious conspiracy was used against 18 January 6 protesters successfully and resulted in over a decade of sentences for most of them, almost 2 decades in some cases. And this is actual seditious conspiracy and sedition operated by the sitting president of the United States, Barack Obama, in December 2016, and the former president, obviously, by the time Mr. Trump was able to get off. It's incredible that he was able to even get to Inauguration Day in January of 2017 and then stay in the office for the entire term. It's incredible that they weren't able to pull this off. But now we have the actual facts. As Tulsi Gabbard so wisely said yesterday, when the media that perpetuated this conspiracy and supported it and still supports it, go look at CNN's coverage today, as a matter of fact. That media tried to say that, well, these are overblown and all that. And Ms. Gabbard rightly said, no, we have released the documents. This is the third tranche that they released yesterday. These are the facts. Even 2 of the high-level analysts for the CIA that are career national security professionals are talking to Ms. Gabbard and her team, and they're confirming things like Brennan insisted that the Steele dossier be used. Does that sound opposite of what he just said in public sworn under oath testimony to Trey Gowdy in that committee? Exactly right. He's a liar. He's not only a liar, he's a damn liar. He's a traitor to this country. Barack Obama is a traitor to this country. Every individual that worked this operation that didn't report it publicly to the authorities is a traitor to this country. They're traitors that, look, Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederate States of America, never did something to this level of treachery and treason to the United States government. He's on the record saying even that he would never do that when he was still a senator before the Civil War started. So this treachery exceeds anything that has ever happened in an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States of America by anyone in the history of this country, including Benedict Arnold and Jefferson Davis. That's where we're at. We have got to get accountability and get these criminals charged, tried, and convicted. The evidence is now clear, and we have it.
That's right. And so as far as the perjury before Congress charges, and isn't it up to now Congress to send a referral to the DOJ for a perjury indictment?
Well, that's one methodology. And then, of course, the Director of National Intelligence is also openly referred. Say that again?
Yeah. I said, well, they're usually pretty worthless. And I know Tulsi made made her referrals as well. But I think, at least they should jump on the bandwagon here, since it did happen in, a congressional committee. here.
Well, they absolutely should. Unfortunately, we don't have many spines in the Republican Party in the majority of the United States Congress, and we need to replace every single one of those coming up here in 2026. And it's a challenge. We've got to get that done, especially if they don't move forward very quickly on this.
Yeah, that's one reason we got in this mess, because there was no one to hold this rogue administration of Obama and with their coup plotters accountable. They played ball with it through the Russiagate collusion hoax and made it more difficult, Paul Ryan and all, on Trump to govern in his first term. I would say they're all traitors as well. Talking about elections, I did want to bring up one across the globe because I keep getting emails from people in South Korea, and I know you look at that particular part of the world. I don't know if you knew I was going to bring this up, but I am concerned about it. It does sound like a lot of parallels from what we've seen in the United States and Brazil with Bolsonaro. South Korea, the former leader is in prison there. People are crying out that there is election fraud. Do you have any insight into what's going on there?
Well, Mr. Gordon Chang and retired Army Colonel John Mills, retired Colonel Grant Newsham were part of a team of international observers that went over to observe this last election in South Korea. And according to their report, there are 5 or 6 things like preventing observers from the opposition from coming in and observing the election polls. Does that sound familiar? Nefarious activities with the digital election systems that have been suspected, and they're looking at how to document that today. You mentioned the previous presidents in prison, and the strong suspicion is that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, has so heavily infiltrated the party that actually won the election that they had almost total infiltration, which means they're inside the digital systems of the election systems, much like we suspect that they are inside the digital systems inside the United States of America, at least in large parts of it, or have attempted to do so. And they also have the ability to do things like, remember the 20,000 fake driver's licenses that were found in California? That came right out of China, if I remember correctly. And so they have the ability even more so to do things like that. So it's highly suspect that this election was really valid. I think there were further reporting from Mr. Chang and that team is going to be happening over time as we see this. And he's still talking about it today. There were massive protests in South Korea, I think yesterday and the day before, about this issue. They don't believe that they'd had a valid election, and there are calls for new elections, and there should be new elections. But most of all, the CCP has infiltrated the country similar to the way they have infiltrated every single institution in the United States, even Microsoft Systems that does the National Nuclear Security Administration, the folks that take care of all of our nuclear weapons. All of them have been infiltrated by the Chinese communists. We are in dire straits. South Korea is also in dire straits. We need to make sure that we're helping them figure that out so that the people of South Korea that are freedom loving, that believe in freedom like those of us in the United States do, and our allies are still there to be a block against the communists in North Korea and the communist Chinese.
You know what? You're absolutely right. And there are a lot of freedom-loving people there because I'm getting so many emails from them because I guess they've seen that I cover election fraud here in the United States and have found a way to reach out to me. So it's kind of incredible. We'll keep our eye on that. Thank you so much, Colonel Manus. It's always good to catch up with you. I love your passion about cleaning up the government and the deep state.
It's got to be done. I was part of it for over 30 years of my life. Our institutions are being destroyed before our eyes. We got to get more of the right people in. Hey, Matt Lohmeyer was just approved as Undersecretary of the Air Force. That's a big victory for Donald Trump in America.
It is. He just looks the part. Yeah. He's central casting, as Trump would say. It's good to see you, Colonel.
There you go. Good to see you, Amber.
Speaking of election fraud, we have some breaking news on the front on this Thursday. The Department of Justice has issued a letter to the Michigan Secretary of State asking for the following information. Number one, a list of election officials responsible for qualified voter file maintenance. 2, documentation of list maintenance actions. They're asking for the statewide voter registration list data along with key list maintenance metrics. They want the unique voter ID practices and ineligible voter identification and removal information. The DOJ set a deadline on that That's the end of this month. So in a matter of days, according to our friend Patrick Kolbach, a former Michigan State senator, that item 1, the list of election officials responsible for qualified voter file maintenance, could likely be converted into an indictment list. We certainly hope so. Coming up, Ed Dowd joins us to talk about Donald Trump's forthcoming visit to the Fed. Could be some fireworks. That's after this very quick break.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
Caesar crossed the Rubicon, Patton urinated in the Rhine, and now Trump is marching on the Federal Reserve. His meeting with Federal Chairman Jerome Powell is likely part of the president's ongoing strong-arming campaign to force Powell to resign from his post. And here's why Trump wants him gone.
It's something you sort of have or you don't have. They don't. The job he's done is just terrible. He ought to raise interest rates. You know, we should be at 1%. We should be leading the world. Instead, we're paying 4%. And if you look at what that means, that's over $1 trillion in interest that we have to pay. That with the striking of a pen, we would be saving more than $1 trillion. Is that right, Scott? Yes, do you have anything to say about it?
And it's true. The biggest impediment to young people, a lot of people I'm talking to, from buying their first homes is the high interest rate, which is being propped up basically by Jerome Powell. Given that inflation rates are the primary reason for why a Fed chairman would keep interest rates and that interest rates are back down to nearly 2%, which is where the Fed wants them, or the inflation rate rather, it seems Powell is keeping these rates high, potentially out of his spite for Trump. Here's a mostly squealing MSNBC host at Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent about the dangers to the market if Trump fired Powell.
Should the president just simply say, I'm going to let the Fed chair finish his term? Wouldn't that supply a degree of comfort and stability to the markets that seem to rattle every time the president suggests that Powell should be go?
Well, I'm not sure where that question comes from, because President Trump has repeatedly said he's not going to fire Chair Powell.
Okay, so
he might like for him to resign, but he's not going to fire him. He said that on numerous occasions. I think he may have even said it again yesterday.
Well, the pressure, then if that's the case, then you think the pressure campaign, which is a fairly incessant pressure campaign from the president on the Fed chair, is that a good thing for the stability of the nation's economy?
I think anyone who goes into public service should expect pressure.
Joining us now to talk about the future of the Fed is Ed Dowd. He's the co-founder of Finance Technologies and the author of the book called Unknown, the Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Ed, how long does Powell have? Trump said 8 months the other day. He gave like a definitive number.
Well, his term ends in 8 months. I think he's going to last the term. I think this is mostly jawboning, trying to get the blame of what I think is a coming recession on the back of the Fed. And they're going to do a good job of that. And now Trump wants interest rates at 1%. If interest rates go to 1%, we've got problems. So you can't have a smoking hot economy and low interest rates. They're not. That would suggest we're going into a recession if we lower interest rates that quickly. So I think today there's going to be a lot of fireworks. I think Jerome Powell is going to finish out his term. They might name his successor so that individual can go around and be the shadow Fed, stating what his policies would be. But I don't think he's going to get fired anytime soon.
So, okay, so you believe that if we did drop interest rates in as quickly as President Trump sounds like he wants to drop them, that would send us into an automatic recession. That we're already approaching a recession anyway, you're saying?
Yeah, we're already approaching the housing market is rolling over. We're getting all sorts of indicators that it's starting to accelerate. I know the stock market is up 8% this year, but that's usually late to the party. The long-term interest rates are persistently lower than they were since January of this year, and we're watching the 3-month T-bill. That should start to move lower, and that usually leads the Fed. The Fed is a little confused. They seem to be anticipating higher inflation, which is being attributed to the coming tariffs. We don't see that. There might be a short-term boost to inflation, but long-term tariffs are deflationary, they're a tax. So the Federal Reserve is likely playing politics in our estimation, just to spite Trump. Real interest rates are 2%, and the solution to real high interest rates of 2% are 2% interest rates themselves. They'll cause a contraction in the economy, which they're doing right now. Consumer sentiment surveys are at an all-time low, and the job market is cold, and it's going to get worse as we roll into a housing recession.
So will we see lower interest rates? Because there are a lot of people who are sitting, and the houses are actually now sitting. Even in my neighborhood, where they used to just fly off the market in like 3 hours, houses are now sitting for months at a time because people just say, I'm not going to pay the 7%, 7.5% interest rate on this. What is reasonable, and what could feasibly happen?
Well, the Fed will eventually chase the interest rates lower as the economy slows and we go into a recession. Now, we don't know whether it's going to be moderate, normal, or severe. So we'll see what happens. But they'll probably lower interest rates 200 basis points when it's all said and done, and they'll play catch up. But for Trump to demand 1% is something that's not how the Federal Reserve works. They just don't willy-nilly set interest rates. They follow supposedly employment and inflation. Employment, in our estimation, has been wrong since the Biden administration. The non-farm payroll numbers are garbage, and the economy is not as good as people think it is right now, and it will continue to, I think, surprise people to the downside as we roll into the fall and the winter. I think September, you're going to see a lot of volatility in the financial markets.
I think a lot of the average people realize maybe the economy is not what is being portrayed on, say, like television, because they say, I still don't feel a whole lot better off yet. I feel a little bit better off, but I don't feel a whole lot better off yet. That is the conversations I have. And this is with, Trump voters. I do want to talk about the tariffs. You say they are deflationary in nature. Trump just did a deal with Japan, right? We highlighted that this week. Why are U.S. automakers saying that Trump's 15% tariff deal with Japan is putting them at a disadvantage? Shouldn't it help them?
I haven't looked at the deal, but here's the problem. Last night, when everybody on the East Coast was asleep, the Japan negotiator came out and said, we don't have a deal. We're not signing anything. So there's some issues as to whether or not we have a deal. That seems to be something that I'm going to take a look at. So there's a lot of jockeying going on around the world. Europe is going to probably fight us on this, and they're watching the Japan deal closely. But tariffs are a tax, and they affect goods that have elasticity of demand, meaning they're substitutes. So what's going to happen is initially there'll be some inflationary pressures, but then demand will drop for these elastic companies, and then they'll have a margin squeeze, and then they'll let employees go. So tariffs are deflationary. This is going to happen, just a matter of time.
All right, Ed. We'll keep our eye on Japan. Deal or no deal? We don't know yet. It's good to see you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, that does it for this hour of The Absolute Truth. DC Live is next with a very special edition because our own Mike Lindell is on the ground. He'll probably pop into that show. But Allison Steinberg will take you through the next hour, and that's The Absolute Truth.